Okay, in part one, we learned how to string on our warp threads and get our loom ready. We just need to throw a rubber band around to kind of hold it together and keep it stable. Later, when we weave up and it's got a good bunch of weaving on here, we can take the rubber band off. But for now, it just helps keep things in place for us and keep it together. So now our loom is ready and we need to get our needle ready. So this pink thread I used for my up and down warp threads. And this is the last time you need to take a ball of yarn to your desk. Is once your warp threads are strung on, don't take a ball anymore. You just need what we call an arm span length of yarn. I know in finger weaving we were always taking whole balls of yarn to our desk, but now we just need an arm span. So take that away. And then here is a green I'm going to use, and I just stretch it the length of both my arms and across my body, and that'll give us, and it doesn't have to be exact, but you don't want like a ton of yarn or it gets tangled and you'll be coming to me and saying, please untangle this crazy yarn. But if you keep it to just the length of your arms and body, you'll be good and you probably won't get too tangled. So now we have our arm span of green, and I've demoed that in class. You guys know what it's like to stretch the yarn along your arms and body to get the right size. Okay, so now we're going to demo getting the yarn on the darning needle. The darning needle has a really big eye and it looks so easy to just shove it through, but what students always find is it starts to get really hacked up on the ends, and it's not the easiest thing to do in the world is get it through the needles because of all the layers of yarn that are twisted together. So we use our little strip of paper and we just put our yarn in the middle and fold it in half, and we have a little tail hanging off of our little strip. It doesn't have to be real long, and on the folded end we kind of have our yarn down at the folded end, and I like to crease it with my fingernail a little bit, not the end that opens, the folded end. We grab that with our pinchers. See, my fingers are pinching it. And we just shove it through the eye of the needle and then pull both the yarn and the paper through till the tail comes through. And then you have a little tail on one side of your needle, and the long piece of yarn goes the other way. So what I like to do is just make a little hill. See my little hill right here? And then I just cross my yarn over till I see this X and this O, and there's my X and O knot that we've been learning. So then I just take the top yarn, put it under the bottom yarn, and pull it through and tie it onto the needle. We tie onto our needles when we're weaving. You don't do that in sewing because it's much harder to get to the fabric, but it'll come off this big old darning needle. So we like to just tie right onto the needle. And then we go to the opposite end of the needle and we make a big blobby knot in the end of our yarn. And we do that again with X and O's. So there's I just brought it up from the bottom and laid it over, and then you can see the X and O knot there. And again, I take my top yarn and go under and come back through that O and pull down. Well, and I made this just teeny little knot. You can barely see it. But if I keep going, I'll start to make a bunch of knots, and they'll get bigger. And sometimes they don't come together, but I just keep going, making X and O's till I get a big old blobby knot that comes together. And this is different than sewing. I mean, if you pulled really hard, your knot would come through your weaving, but all your warp threads would come off. We're just kind of making a stop that will stop here at our first warp. So there's now my big blobby knot. So I'm ready to start weaving on my weft. The weft are the over and under threads. We're going to start at the bottom of the loom where it's folded, opposite where the tape and rubber bands are. And we're just going to start any old way. Oh, I'm going to start under my weaving. So you can see my needle is under my first warp thread. Just say to yourself, am I under that yarn or am I over that yarn? So I'm under, and wherever my needle goes, my yarn goes. So I just start going over, under, over, under, over, under. And when it starts to get hard for me to get my needle in, I like to lay it down and start just lifting those warp threads and pushing my needle through. So there I've gone under, over, under, over, under, over, all the way across. I don't want to miss any of those warp threads and like go over 2 of them. I want to just make sure I go over and under all of them. And then this is really important. I'm pulling my yarn through all the way to my blobby knot. If you don't, if you just keep weaving and try and pull down later, you'll get tangled and you'll be coming to me to untangle it, and you won't be the first student that that's happened to. But save yourself time and trouble and make sure you're pulling each line all the way through. Okay, so I'm down to my blobby knot. I got my first line woven over and under. So now I turn to the next side. I don't go back and turn or anything like that. I just turn it over and I go to my next side, the long side that doesn't have the flap like this side. This is the long side. And I just do the exact same thing again. Oh, under, over, under, over, under, over. And I don't need to look back and see where I stopped on the other side. I don't need to think about any of that. I just want to do exactly what I did on the side before. And again, I pull all the way through till it hooks on the edge. You want it to hook. So you got to do that every time. If I just kept weaving, and then tried to pull everything on all the way through, again, bad tangle. So don't do that. Pull each line through. So now I have both my first lines. Again, I'm on the long side, and I'm going to turn back over to the shorter side. And now I have to really look at what I did before. And that knot's being a little funky. So I started under the thread before. I'm under this yarn. So I have to start the next line opposite. Every time I've got to look at what I did the line before. So I was under, so now I start over. And there's my needle going over, under, all the way across, just like we did before, making sure it's opposite of what I did last time. And then I pull all the way down till it hooks on the side. Now, my tail here is kind of bugging me because it's so long, so I'm just going to chop it down a little bit. Knots will not show in the end because we turn the whole thing inside out, and all our knots will be inside our creature. So don't cut them too close to the knot. Leave a little bit of area, or it's a greater chance of them coming untied. So now you can see down here I was under, up here I'm over, and it's opposite the whole way across. And that's going to get us that checkerboard that we want, that checkerboard effect that's really durable. And that's what humans learned, that if they weave these opposite lines, they get really durable fabric. Okay, so I did my short side, and I just turn and come back to the side that's longer. And I have to look again every time. What did I do the line before? I'm under, so now I start over. My needle's my guide. It went over this warp thread. It's going to be able to just create the opposite all the way across, same as we did before. And we pull all the way through till it hooks on. And that is all there is to it, really. We just keep doing that. We turn back to our short side. We look, oh, I was over on my last line. So I need to be on opposite. So I was over, I got to go under. And again, we'll get that checkerboard effect. And you just keep going till you run out of arm span, or you want to change color. And in the next video, I will show you how to change your color or add on more weft thread. Again, I'm over, so here I go under my third line, And I'm just going to keep weaving, 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 and go up the loom and squish things down. You don't have to squish everything down right away. Later we'll squish things more. There, my needle came off my yarn, so just as a reminder, I must have not tied my knot very tight. You go into the strip, you pinch, and you push that folded edge through and pull it through the needle till you have your tail. And again, you can do your X and O knot. And I'm going to double it this time so it doesn't come off. And remember, you can always cut your needle off if you want to change colors. Okay, so this is the end of part 2. Part 3, I'll show you how to change your color and add more weft.